What if I told you that your grandmother, your father, or that friend who passed away too soon might have actually watched their entire funeral service, experiencing every word spoken, every tear shed, and every emotion expressed by those they left behind? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. This isn't some comforting fantasy or wishful thinking. This is based on documented evidence from one of the most extraordinary psychic experiences ever recorded. In 1923, during what should have been a routine séance, Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, experienced something that would forever change our understanding of death and consciousness. As he entered his famous trance state to deliver a reading, something unprecedented happened that made his stenographer drop her pen in shock. A recently deceased man's soul had suddenly appeared, not to deliver mystical wisdom or cosmic revelations, but to complain. He was frustrated, spiritually disturbed, because his family had completely misunderstood his final wishes at his funeral. This wasn't supposed to happen. Cayce had been diagnosing illnesses and predicting future events for decades, but never had a deceased soul interrupted a reading to express dissatisfaction with their own memorial service. Has this ever happened to you? That strange feeling during a funeral that your loved one was somehow present, watching, perhaps even trying to communicate? What you're about to discover might surprise you, because according to Cayce's documented reading 14722, that feeling might be more real than you ever imagined. The deceased man had watched his entire memorial service from beginning to end. He witnessed the conflicts between relatives, felt the weight of their guilt, and experienced every moment of emotional turmoil that unfolded around his casket. This revelation shattered conventional beliefs about death being a complete separation from earthly existence. Instead, it revealed that consciousness continues, that souls maintain awareness and emotional investment in their earthly affairs, particularly during significant events like their own funeral services. This single experience fundamentally transformed everything we thought we knew about what happens when we die. It suggested that death isn't an ending or even a complete departure. It's a transformation of consciousness that maintains deep connections to the physical world. The implications are staggering when you consider that every funeral, every memorial service, every final goodbye might actually be witnessed by the very soul we're honoring. Stay with me until the end, because what Edgar Cayce discovered through thousands of documented readings about souls observing their own funerals will completely revolutionize how you think about death, consciousness, and the afterlife. The evidence suggests that how we conduct these sacred ceremonies has profound consequences, not just for the living, but for the spiritual welfare of the departed themselves. But this was just the beginning of Cayce's shocking revelations about what really happens when souls see their own bodies at the funeral. If these revelations about consciousness after death have opened your mind to new spiritual possibilities, I'd love to have you join our community of truth seekers. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring the hidden mysteries of existence together. There's so much more profound knowledge waiting to be discovered. Working from his modest office in Virginia Beach, Cayce began to uncover what he called the hidden truth about consciousness after death. Through reading 14683, he revealed something that would transform our entire understanding of the afterlife journey. When souls leave their physical bodies, they don't simply vanish into some distant spiritual realm. Instead, they enter what Cayce termed borderland consciousness, a fascinating state where individual awareness remains intact while the soul begins its spiritual transformation. This borderland isn't some mystical fairy tale. It's a documented phenomenon where newly departed souls maintain their emotional connections to earthly experiences, their memories, their love for family and friends. Think about the profound impact of this revelation. It means that the essence of who your loved ones were doesn't disappear the moment their heart stops beating. Their consciousness, their personality, their capacity to feel and observe continues in this transitional state. What makes Cayce's discoveries so compelling is that these weren't just abstract spiritual concepts pulled from thin air. His readings included specific, verifiable details about deceased individuals that were later confirmed by their families. Names, personal habits, family secrets, even physical descriptions that Cayce had no possible way of knowing. This documented evidence lends incredible credibility to his claims about post-death consciousness and completely changes the conversation about what happens behind the scenes of death. The implications become even more extraordinary when you consider reading 57564, where Cayce explained that these souls don't drift away to some unreachable dimension. They remain near familiar places and people, especially during significant life events. Your childhood home, your favorite restaurant, the hospital room where they passed. These locations hold magnetic power for transitioning souls. But perhaps most remarkably, they're drawn to their own funeral services with an intensity that defies our conventional understanding of death. This isn't about ghosts haunting locations or supernatural phenomena that should frighten us. It's about love transcending physical boundaries, about consciousness making deliberate decisions to witness the final earthly chapter of their story. The funeral becomes a bridge between two states of existence, a moment where the departed soul can observe the true impact of their life on others while processing their own transformation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what Cayce discovered about how souls actually experience their funeral ceremonies will challenge everything you thought you knew about death, grief, and the power of our final goodbye. The emotional journey these souls undergo while watching their own memorial services reveals profound insights about the mindset of consciousness after death and the hidden dynamics that occur when we gather to honor the departed. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," if you're starting to see death from a completely different perspective. Picture this transformation in your mindset about every funeral you've ever attended. That overwhelming sense of presence you felt when saying goodbye to your grandmother, the inexplicable comfort that washed over you during your father's service, or that moment when you could have sworn your best friend was right there beside you. These weren't just emotional coping mechanisms or wishful thinking. According to Cayce's revelations, these experiences represent genuine spiritual encounters, with souls actively participating in their own farewell ceremonies. The hidden truth behind these moments becomes even more powerful when you understand what happened in reading 25468. A grieving widow, desperate to know if her husband had found peace, sought Cayce's guidance. What she discovered changed her entire perspective on death and mourning. Her husband hadn't simply moved on to some distant spiritual realm. He had witnessed his beautiful funeral service from beginning to end. But here's what makes this revelation so extraordinary. He felt profound gratitude for every expression of love and respect shown by family and friends. This completely revolutionizes our understanding of the funeral experience. We often focus on our own grief, our own need for closure, our own journey through loss. But Cayce's discoveries reveal that deceased souls are having their own profound emotional journey during these ceremonies. They're not passive observers watching from some unreachable dimension. Instead, they're actively processing every word spoken, every intention behind the tears, every gesture of love and remembrance. Think about the impact of this revelation on how we approach mourning. When you speak at a funeral, when you share a memory, when you express forgiveness or gratitude, you're not just comforting the living, you're participating in a living spiritual exchange with the consciousness of the departed. The eulogy becomes a conversation, the flowers become a gift they can actually appreciate, and the tears become a language of love they can fully understand. This active emotional processing means that funeral ceremonies carry weight far beyond what we ever imagined. The departed soul experiences every moment, absorbing the energy of love, processing the unresolved conflicts, feeling the genuine emotions of those they cherished. It's a transformational experience for both the living and the dead, where healing can occur on multiple levels of existence simultaneously. The decisions we make about how to honor our loved ones, the words we choose to speak, the intentions we bring to these sacred moments, all of this creates ripples through both the physical and spiritual realms. But what Cayce discovered about the specific ways souls react to different types of funeral experiences will fundamentally change how you think about saying goodbye. Write in the comments, "I felt their presence," if you've ever experienced that unmistakable sense of a departed loved one being with you during their service. The impact of our emotional state during funerals extends far beyond what we see on the surface. Cayce's reading, 36571, unveiled a hidden truth that transforms how we should approach these sacred ceremonies. When family members bring guilt, anger, or unresolved conflicts into the funeral space, something profound happens behind the scenes of the spiritual realm. These negative emotions don't just affect the living, they create actual spiritual disturbance for the transitioning soul, potentially hindering their peaceful progression into the afterlife. Imagine the journey a soul must navigate during its own funeral service. Through Reading 1472, Cayce revealed that departed souls experience an incredibly complex mix of emotions during these ceremonies. They feel joy when witnessing genuine expressions of love, but they also experience confusion about their new state of existence. Perhaps most heart-wrenching of all, they sometimes feel sadness when seeing the depth of grief their passing has caused their loved ones. This emotional complexity shows us that death doesn't eliminate feeling. It transforms it into something even more nuanced and profound. The decisions we make about how to conduct ourselves at funerals carry weight we never imagined. When family arguments erupt over the casket, when bitter words are spoken in the presence of the deceased, when guilt consumes the ceremony instead of love, the departing soul experiences this turmoil as spiritual interference. It's as if emotional static disrupts their ability to transition peacefully, creating obstacles in their path toward higher consciousness. But here's where the revelations become deeply personal and transformational. Consider the documented case of a man who died suddenly, leaving his widow devastated and struggling with their last conversation. When she later sought comfort through Cayce, she discovered something that would change her entire grieving process. Her husband's soul had heard every single word of his eulogy. More importantly, he wanted her to know that her beautiful tribute had brought him genuine comfort during his spiritual transition. If this journey into Edgar Cayce's extraordinary discoveries has touched something deep within you, a simple like on this video helps me know that these spiritual revelations are reaching the hearts and minds that need them most. This reveals the extraordinary power of our words and intentions during these ceremonies. Every heartfelt memory shared, every expression of forgiveness offered, every word of love spoken becomes a gift to the transitioning soul. The mindset we bring to funerals, whether focused on celebration or consumed by regret, directly influences the spiritual experience of our departed loved ones. The transformation in understanding this brings is remarkable. Funerals aren't just about our grief or our need for closure. They're collaborative spiritual experiences where the living and the dead participate together in a sacred transition. The energy we create, the emotions we express, the love we share, all of this becomes part of the soul's journey into whatever comes next. Write in the comments, energy matters, if you're beginning to understand how powerful our emotional presence really is during these sacred moments. This revelation transforms funerals from mere memorial services into something far more profound and interactive. Cayce's readings revealed that these ceremonies function as actual communication channels between the living and the dead. Every word you speak at a funeral, every tear you shed, every silent prayer you offer, all of this is being received and experienced by the transitioning soul in real time. It's not symbolic, it's a genuine spiritual conversation happening across the boundaries of life and death. But the purpose behind this communication goes deeper than we ever imagined. Reading 57493 unveiled a hidden truth about why souls remain present during their own funerals. This isn't just about witnessing final tributes or saying goodbye. The funeral experience serves a crucial spiritual purpose. It helps the departing soul understand the true impact their earthly life had on others. This understanding becomes essential information for their continued spiritual development in whatever realm awaits them. Think about the profound implications of this discovery. When someone passes away, they don't automatically know how deeply they affected the lives around them. The funeral becomes their education, their moment of revelation about the ripple effects of their choices, their love, their presence in the world. The stories shared during eulogies, the tears of gratitude, the expressions of how they changed someone's life, all of this becomes crucial data for their spiritual growth. This transforms our understanding of death from an ending into a transitional learning experience. Every funeral becomes a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms, creating a moment of intimate intersection where two worlds meet. The departed soul gains closure by witnessing the love they generated, understanding by seeing their life's true significance, and guidance for their continued journey based on the emotional energy created during their memorial service. The decisions we make about what to share, how to honor them, and what energy we bring to these ceremonies directly influences not just our own healing process, but the spiritual development of our loved ones. We're not just remembering the dead, we're actively participating in their transformation into whatever comes next. The mindset we bring to these moments, the intentions behind our words, the authenticity of our emotions, all of this becomes part of their spiritual education. Now I want to explore something even more extraordinary about this bridge between worlds, because what Cayce discovered about how souls can actually influence their own funeral ceremonies will challenge everything you thought you knew about the boundaries between life and death. Write in the comments, we're all connected. If you're starting to see how death doesn't really separate us from those we love. The emotional journey of souls during their funeral experiences reveals something that completely transforms our understanding of death and spiritual progression. In reading 37442, Cayce documented a soul observing its own funeral being moved to tears, but not from sadness. These were tears of overwhelming gratitude for the love being expressed by family and friends. What makes this revelation extraordinary is that this emotional experience actually accelerated the soul's spiritual progression, helping it release earthly attachments more completely and move forward in its journey. This hidden truth changes everything about how we perceive the impact of our words during these sacred ceremonies. When you stand up to deliver a eulogy, when you share a cherished memory, when you express love or forgiveness, you're not speaking to empty air or just comforting the living. According to Cayce's documented readings, every single word is being received and processed by the departing consciousness. This makes funeral speeches actual conversations with the deceased, transforming these moments into genuine spiritual exchanges. The power of this communication becomes even more profound when you consider what happened in 1934 with a controversial businessman whose death left behind a complicated legacy. This man had lived a life marked by both success and ethical controversies, leaving many people with mixed feelings about his character. During his funeral, the transformation that occurred was nothing short of miraculous. His soul witnessed the entire ceremony, but was particularly affected by one person's speech about forgiveness and redemption. That single moment of grace, those words of understanding and forgiveness spoken over his casket, created such a powerful spiritual shift that it helped resolve karmic patterns which might have otherwise required additional earthly incarnations to heal. The decisions made by that speaker to choose forgiveness over judgment, redemption over condemnation, literally altered the spiritual trajectory of the departed soul. This reveals the incredible responsibility and opportunity we have during these ceremonies to participate in actual spiritual healing. The mindset we bring to funerals, the intentions behind our words, the choice to focus on love rather than lingering resentments, all of this carries weight far beyond what we can see. We're not just processing our own grief or sharing memories for the benefit of other mourners. We're actively participating in the spiritual development of someone we cared about, helping them understand their life's true impact, and providing them with the emotional and spiritual resources they need for whatever comes next. But there's something even more remarkable about this spiritual communication that Cayce discovered, something that reveals how souls don't just passively receive our words and emotions during funerals. Write in the comments, words have power, if you're realizing how much impact our funeral speeches really have on departed souls. The hidden truth about funeral experiences goes far beyond souls simply receiving our communications. Reading 15981 revealed something that will fundamentally change how you interpret those unexplainable moments of comfort during memorial services. Departed souls don't just passively observe their funerals, they can actually influence the emotional atmosphere of their own ceremony. They actively participate by bringing comfort to grieving family members through their spiritual presence, creating waves of peace that wash over the entire gathering. Think about those moments you've experienced at funerals when an unexpected sense of calm suddenly filled the room, when the overwhelming grief seemed to lift just enough to allow healing to begin. That transformation in the emotional atmosphere isn't coincidence or wishful thinking. According to Cayce's discoveries, these are genuine spiritual communications from the soul making its transition to higher realms. The departed consciousness is actively working to comfort those they love, using their new spiritual abilities to ease the pain of separation. This revelation transforms our entire understanding of those mysterious funeral moments. The love and peace that mourners sometimes unexpectedly feel, that sense of presence that seems to embrace the entire gathering, that sudden shift from despair to hope. These aren't psychological coping mechanisms our minds create to deal with loss. They're actual spiritual interventions, deliberate acts of love from souls who are learning to navigate their new existence while maintaining their deep connections to earthly relationships. The weight of evidence supporting these revelations is staggering. The Association for Research and Enlightenment archives contain hundreds of documented readings where Cayce consistently described souls remaining emotionally connected to earthly relationships during significant events like memorial services. These weren't isolated incidents or occasional psychic impressions. They represent a consistent pattern of consciousness continuing beyond death, maintaining the capacity for love, communication, and spiritual influence. This evidence challenges everything we've been taught about death being a complete separation. The journey of consciousness doesn't end with the last heartbeat. It transforms into something more expansive while retaining the core essence of who that person was. The decisions souls make about how to use their newfound spiritual abilities often center around providing comfort and guidance to those they've left behind, especially during the vulnerable moments of their own funeral services. The impact of understanding this spiritual dynamic changes how we approach not just funerals, but death itself. When we know that our loved ones aren't gone, but transformed, when we understand that they're actively working to help us heal, When we recognize that those moments of unexpected peace are their way of saying goodbye, the entire experience becomes a collaboration between worlds rather than a one-sided farewell. But there's something even more extraordinary about how souls experience their transition that reveals the deeper purpose behind their continued presence. Write in the comments, "I've felt this," if you've ever experienced that unexplainable sense of peace or presence during a funeral that seemed to come from beyond. The profound nature of this spiritual communication becomes even more touching when you consider the documented case in Reading 26,002. A young child had died in a tragic accident, leaving his mother devastated beyond words. During his funeral, something extraordinary was happening behind the scenes of the spiritual realm. The child's soul was present throughout the entire service, experiencing the overwhelming love from family and friends in a way that transformed his understanding of his new existence. Through Cayce, this child wanted his mother to know something that would forever change her journey through grief. The funeral service had helped him understand that he was still deeply loved in his new spiritual state. The transformation in his consciousness wasn't about losing connection to earthly love. It was about experiencing that love in an expanded, more profound way. The tears shed for him, the memories shared, the expressions of how much he meant to everyone, all of this became a foundation of spiritual strength for his continued existence. This revelation challenges every conventional understanding we have about death. Cayce's readings reveal that death isn't an ending or complete separation from those we love. Instead, it's a consciousness transformation that maintains emotional and spiritual connections to earthly existence while expanding into something far greater. The bonds of love, the memories created, the impact made on others, none of this disappears. It all becomes part of the soul's eternal journey, transformed into spiritual energy that transcends physical limitations. But the purpose behind the soul's presence at its own funeral goes deeper than just witnessing love and saying goodbye. Reading 57,568 explained that the funeral experience actually serves as preparation for the soul's journey through what Cayce called spiritual dimensions. The emotions expressed during the ceremony, the prayers offered, the love shared, all of this provides the departing soul with spiritual strength and guidance for navigating its new existence. Think about the incredible responsibility this places on how we conduct these sacred ceremonies. We're not just processing our own grief or honoring memory. We're actively equipping our loved ones with the spiritual resources they need for whatever comes next. The decisions we make about what energy to bring, what words to speak, what intentions to hold, become part of their preparation for dimensions of existence we can barely imagine. The impact of understanding this transforms funerals from sad farewells into powerful launching ceremonies, where the living actively participate in preparing the departed for their next phase of spiritual development. The mindset shift from mourning loss to celebrating transformation creates an entirely different energy that serves both the grieving and the departed. Now I want to reveal something that will completely change how you think about the responsibility we have toward the dead. Because what Cayce discovered about how negative emotions at funerals can trap souls will make you reconsider every funeral you've ever attended. Write in the comments, "Love transcends death," if you're beginning to see how our connections with loved ones continue even after they pass away. The weight of responsibility this knowledge places on our shoulders is both profound and transformational. How we conduct funerals carries real consequences for the departed soul's spiritual welfare that extend far beyond anything we previously imagined. Every expression of love, every word of forgiveness, every moment of genuine peace created during these ceremonies doesn't just comfort the living. It actively assists the soul's transition to higher spiritual realms. We're not just saying goodbye, we're participating in their spiritual acceleration toward perfect awareness, But here's where the hidden truth becomes both empowering and sobering. The emotional energy we create during funerals has direct impact on the speed and ease of the soul's progression. Reading 16:20-3 revealed something that should make every family reconsider how they approach these sacred moments. Family arguments during funerals cause actual distress for departed souls, creating spiritual interference that delays their progression toward higher consciousness. Conversely, expressions of love and forgiveness accelerate their journey toward what Cayce called perfect spiritual awareness. The decisions we make about how to honor the dead literally influence their spiritual development. Think about the profound implications of this revelation. When family members bring old grudges to funerals, when bitter words are spoken over the casket, when the ceremony becomes a battleground for unresolved conflicts, the departing soul experiences this turmoil as spiritual static that disrupts their natural progression. This became tragically evident in a documented 1937 case involving a wealthy industrialist whose death revealed the devastating impact of negative funeral energy. During his memorial service, bitter arguments broke out among family members over his estate and legacy. Behind the scenes of the spiritual realm, his soul witnessed these conflicts and became spiritually troubled by the disharmony. The transformation he needed for peaceful progression was blocked by the emotional chaos surrounding his physical farewell. The situation became so spiritually problematic that his widow later sought Cayce's guidance, learning that her husband's soul was struggling to move forward. The negative energy from his funeral had created spiritual anchors that kept him bound to earthly concerns instead of allowing natural progression. The solution required a completely different approach, a private ceremony focused entirely on love and forgiveness to help him find the peace necessary for spiritual advancement. This case reveals the extraordinary power we hold during these ceremonies. The mindset we bring, the intentions behind our presence, the choice to prioritize healing over conflict. All of this becomes part of the departed soul's spiritual journey. We're not just processing our own grief, we're actively determining whether we help or hinder someone's transition into whatever comes next. But what Cayce discovered about souls who become trapped by funeral experiences will reveal an even more startling dimension to this responsibility. Write in the comments, energy affects everything. If you're realizing how much our emotional state during funerals really matters for our departed loved ones. The journey of consciousness after death unfolds in ways that completely transform our understanding of the dying process. Physical death doesn't create an immediate, complete severing of emotional connections. Instead, souls experience a gradual transition during which they remain remarkably sensitive to the thoughts, emotions, and actions of those they've left behind. This gradual shift challenges our conventional mindset about death being an instant transformation from presence to absence. The timeline of this spiritual transition varies dramatically based on individual factors that reveal the complex nature of consciousness itself. Reading 26:286 explained that souls remain closely connected to earthly consciousness for periods, ranging from days to several months after death. The duration depends entirely on their spiritual development and the strength of their earthly attachments. Those who lived lives focused on spiritual growth may transition more quickly, while souls with intense emotional bonds or unresolved earthly concerns may remain connected for extended periods. This revelation places the funeral experience in an entirely new context. These ceremonies often mark crucial turning points in the soul's transition process. The decisions made during these services, the energy created, the emotions expressed, all of this can either facilitate smooth spiritual progression or create complications that extend the transition period. The impact goes far beyond what happens in the moment. It influences the entire trajectory of the soul's journey into whatever comes next. The responsibility this knowledge places on the living is both profound and transformational. Cayce's readings reveal that how we honor the dead carries real consequences for their spiritual welfare, making every funeral an opportunity to actively assist departing souls toward higher consciousness. We're not just passive participants in memorial services, we're active contributors to someone's spiritual development. The mindset we bring, the intentions behind our words, the choice to focus on love rather than conflict, all of this becomes part of their transition experience. This hidden truth transforms funerals from events focused solely on our own grief into collaborative spiritual experiences where the living and the dead work together toward healing and progression. The energy we create during these ceremonies can either provide spiritual wind beneath the soul's wings, accelerating their journey toward higher realms, or create spiritual turbulence that complicates their natural progression. Understanding this responsibility changes everything about how we approach death, grief, and the sacred act of saying goodbye. Every funeral becomes a moment of choice. Will we contribute to spiritual healing or spiritual hindrance? The power lies entirely in our hands, in our hearts, and in our willingness to prioritize the departed soul's welfare over our own emotional needs. But what Cayce discovered about souls who become spiritually trapped by their funeral experiences reveals an even more startling dimension to this sacred responsibility. Write in the comments, "We have the power." If you're beginning to understand how much influence we really have over our loved ones' spiritual journey after death. The spiritual consequences of negative funeral energy can become so severe that souls actually become trapped between dimensions, unable to complete their natural progression. Reading 37445 documented a heartbreaking case that reveals the hidden dangers of excessive grief and guilt during memorial services. A woman's soul became earthbound after her funeral because the overwhelming guilt and grief expressed by her family created what Cayce called spiritual anchors, emotional chains that prevented her from moving forward into higher spiritual realms. This wasn't a temporary delay in her spiritual journey, it was a complete spiritual imprisonment. The family's inability to release her with love and blessing had inadvertently trapped her consciousness in a liminal state between life and death. The transformation she needed for spiritual progression was blocked by the very people who loved her most. The situation became so problematic that it required a second ceremony, this one focused entirely on release and blessing before her soul could finally continue its journey. This case reveals the crucial difference between healthy grieving and spiritually harmful mourning. While natural sadness is completely expected and appropriate when someone dies, excessive grief or unresolved guilt can actually harm the departed soul's spiritual welfare. The most loving action we can take for those who have passed is to celebrate their life, express our gratitude for the time we shared, and release them with blessing and peace rather than clinging to them through our pain. The mindset shift from possessive mourning to loving release creates entirely different spiritual energy that serves both the living and the dead. But the power of positive funeral energy goes far beyond just avoiding spiritual harm. It can actually create miraculous transformation. A remarkable case documented in Reading 4871 demonstrates the incredible healing potential of funeral ceremonies conducted with the right intentions. A man who had lived a troubled life, struggling with addiction and broken relationships, died unexpectedly. His family expected the worst for his spiritual condition, given the pain and chaos he had created during his earthly existence. But during his funeral, something extraordinary happened. His estranged daughter, whom he had hurt deeply through his choices, made a decision that would alter his entire spiritual trajectory. She spoke words of forgiveness over his casket. According to Cayce's reading, this act of forgiveness created such intense spiritual light that it literally transformed the man's consciousness. The healing power of her words helped him overcome karmic patterns that might have otherwise required multiple lifetimes to resolve. One moment of grace, One decision to choose love over resentment created spiritual alchemy that transcended the limitations of his earthly existence. This reveals the extraordinary power hidden within our funeral decisions, the choice between judgment and forgiveness, between holding on to pain and releasing it with love, between spiritual imprisonment and spiritual liberation. But there's something even more remarkable about how this spiritual transformation works that will change everything you think you know about death and redemption. Write in the comments, "Forgiveness heals everything," if you're beginning to understand the incredible power of choosing love over resentment, even after death. The dual healing power of properly conducted funeral ceremonies creates transformation that extends far beyond what we can see in the physical realm. These sacred moments have the potential to heal both the living and the dead simultaneously, creating a spiritual alchemy that transcends the boundaries between worlds. When forgiveness is spoken over the departed, it literally releases souls from spiritual bondage, breaking chains of karma that might have otherwise bound them for eons. Love expressed during these ceremonies provides the departing soul with strength for their continued journey, while prayers offered with genuine intention guide souls toward higher spiritual realms. But the impact of funeral experiences goes even deeper into the mechanics of spiritual development. Reading 57:5-6-12 revealed something that transforms our understanding of consciousness after death. The emotional energy created during funeral ceremonies often determines how quickly souls transition through what Cayce called planetary sojourns, spiritual dimensions corresponding to different levels of consciousness development. A funeral filled with love, forgiveness, and peaceful release can accelerate a soul's progression through these dimensions, while ceremonies marked by conflict or excessive grief can slow or even stall their spiritual advancement. This knowledge creates a profound shift in how we think about our own mortality and legacy. Understanding that our soul will likely witness our own funeral changes everything about how we want to be remembered and what we hope our loved ones will say about us. It encourages us to live in ways that make our funeral a celebration of growth and love, rather than a burden of regret and unfinished business. The decisions we make today about how to treat others, how to resolve conflicts, how to express love, become investments in our own spiritual send-off. The mindset transformation this brings is remarkable. When you know that your consciousness will probably observe your own memorial service, you begin to consider what energy you want created in that sacred space. Do you want family members arguing over your possessions or sharing stories of your kindness? Do you want people speaking words of resentment or gratitude? Do you want your funeral to be a spiritual launching pad for your continued journey, or a complicated, emotional burden that delays your progression? This awareness encourages us to live with greater intention, to heal relationships while we can, to express love more freely, and to create the kind of legacy that generates positive spiritual energy. The hidden truth is that we're not just living for our earthly experience, we're also preparing for our own funeral experience and the spiritual journey that follows. Now, I want to explore the most extraordinary revelation Cayce discovered about funeral ceremonies, something that reveals how evolved souls actually plan their own memorial services before incarnating on Earth. Write in the comments, "Living with intention," if you're starting to think differently about how you want to be remembered and what kind of energy you want at your own funeral. The transformation that occurs when souls experience peaceful, loving funerals extends far beyond their immediate spiritual progression. Reading 28:16 revealed something that creates a beautiful reciprocal cycle between the living and the dead. Souls who witness harmonious, love-filled memorial services often become spiritual guides for their living family members, providing protection and guidance from the spiritual realms. The positive energy they receive during their funeral experience becomes spiritual fuel that enables them to give back, creating an ongoing relationship that transcends physical death. This hidden truth means that how we conduct funerals doesn't just affect the immediate transition period. It determines whether our departed loved ones become sources of spiritual support for us throughout our lives. The decisions we make about bringing love rather than conflict, forgiveness rather than resentment, celebration rather than despair, directly influence whether they can serve as protective guides or remain spiritually hindered by the negative energy we created. But perhaps the most extraordinary revelation about funeral experiences involves their permanent impact on consciousness itself. According to reading 5749-4, soul's funeral experiences create permanent memories that are carried into future incarnations. The love expressed, the forgiveness offered, the peace created during these ceremonies become spiritual assets that benefit the soul throughout its eternal journey across multiple lifetimes. Every word of kindness spoken over someone's casket becomes part of their permanent spiritual wealth, influencing their capacity for love and growth in future existences. This transforms our understanding of funerals from temporary farewell ceremonies into investments in eternal spiritual development. Every funeral contributes to a soul's ongoing evolution across countless incarnations. The words spoken, the emotions expressed, the intentions held during these sacred moments become part of the soul's permanent spiritual record, creating either spiritual abundance or spiritual debt that follows them through their eternal journey. The mindset shift this brings is profound. When you speak at a funeral, when you choose forgiveness over resentment, when you express genuine love rather than harboring grudges, you're not just affecting the immediate moment. You're contributing to that soul's spiritual bank account across eternity, providing them with resources they'll draw upon in future lives, future challenges, future opportunities for growth. Cayce's revelations ultimately remind us that love truly transcends death in ways we never imagined. The departed don't disappear into some unreachable void. They remain connected to us through bonds of love that continue to evolve and deepen. Our funeral practices carry real consequences for their spiritual welfare as they continue their journey toward ultimate enlightenment and return to the source of all light. The impact of understanding this reaches into every aspect of how we live, how we love, and how we prepare for our own inevitable transition. The journey of consciousness doesn't end with physical death. It transforms into something more expansive while maintaining the essential connections that make us who we are. But there's something even more mind-blowing about this spiritual communication that will completely revolutionize how you think about the boundaries between life and death. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey into Edgar Cayce's extraordinary revelations about consciousness after death, you've discovered something that most people never realize, that our connections with loved ones don't end when their hearts stop beating, but transform into something even more profound and eternal. The understanding that souls witness their own funerals, that they're affected by our words and emotions, that they can influence the atmosphere and continue guiding us from spiritual realms, fundamentally changes how we approach both life and death. This kind of transformational knowledge is exactly what I share here on this channel. Hidden truths that expand your understanding of consciousness, spirituality, and the deeper mysteries of existence. If these revelations have opened your mind to new possibilities about what happens beyond physical death, I'd love for you to subscribe so we can continue exploring these profound topics together. There's so much more to discover about the nature of consciousness, the afterlife, and the spiritual dimensions that surround us every day. I can feel the connection we've built through this exploration of Cayce's discoveries, and it means everything to me that you've chosen to invest this time in expanding your spiritual understanding. If this content has touched something deep within you, a simple like on this video helps me know that these revelations are reaching the people who need to hear them most. For those who made it all the way to this moment, write in the comments, "I'm ready for deeper truth," because that's exactly what you are. You're someone willing to question conventional understanding and explore the profound mysteries of existence. There's a video right here that complements this topic perfectly, diving even deeper into the spiritual dimensions Edgar Cayce revealed through his extraordinary readings. Click and continue with me over there, because the journey into understanding consciousness after death has only just begun, and what you'll discover next might be even more life-changing than what we've explored today.